Good afternoon. Welcome to this meeting of the Southdown National Park Authority's Policy and Resources Committee. My name is Stephen Ridgen and I'm chairing this meeting of the committee. I'd like to welcome Foley Estate, who we'll hear from later. And I'd also like to remind members and members of the public that SDNPA members have a primary responsibility for ensuring that the authority furthers the national park purposes and duty. Members regard themselves first and foremost as members of the authority and will act in the best interests of the authority and of the park, rather than as representatives of any interest groups. To minimise disruption, please could I ask you to switch mobile phones to silent and please exit via the entrance to the hall if you need to leave during the proceedings. Please can I remind members to speak clearly and directly into the microphone, bringing the microphone forward if necessary but no closer than 6 inches to avoid feedback, and please turn your microphone off when you've finished speaking. We've scheduled a break at around 2:40, but I'll try to fit in some short breaks each hour so we can just shake out and have stretch and warm up a little bit, if that's okay. Before we go into item 1, just one other thing. I would like to express on behalf of the committee our disappointment at the external audit situation. We should have the external audit findings and opinion and audited statement of accounts and letter of representation at this meeting. But unfortunately, it's going to go directly to the NPA meeting on the 9th of December due to timing issues. This bypassing of the committee is not something that the authority would wish to see in the future, so we just make that point clear. Okay, let's go on to item 1, apologies for absence. Richard?
We've received apologies for absence from Melanie Hunt, Vicky Wells and Kat Davies.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Yes, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 9, the Foley Estate WEP. Part of the land owned by the Foley Estate is leased to Liphook Golf Club. I'm a member of Liphook Golf Club. I don't believe it precludes me from taking part in the debate or voting unless I'm advised otherwise, but I think I ought to mention it.
That's personal interest, that's okay. Thank you. Any more? No. Item 3, minutes of the previous Policy and Resources Committee meeting. If anyone has any points of accuracy, please raise them. I'll go through them page by page. I think that will be the most structured way of doing it. I'll use the page numbers that we've got in the pack. So the first one's page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and finally, Vanessa. Oh, sorry, Vanessa.
Yeah, I've got something
Apologies.
on page 15.
15?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So under 64, the last bullet point, I asked those questions, but it also kind of asked if we were bringing together a kind of stakeholder group to discuss this across the area, and I wanted to know what was going on. So it wasn't just about that.
Okay.
If I could add that.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Item 4, updates on previous committee decisions. Sean, I think you've got a...
Yeah. Just a quick update on, since we last met on recruitment, we were running a recruitment exercise for a Director of Landscapes and Operations. We've successfully completed that. Alison Potts will be, who is a successful candidate, will be joining us in February. And Laura, who Alison will be replacing, will stay with us until then.
Thank you. Thanks, Sean. Any other officers, any other? No.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask if there is any update on the negotiations with Hampshire on the Droxland splash route that we brought up in this committee about a year ago.
Thanks, Jerry. Nothing since the last PNR, no. We understand that work is going on at Hampshire, and our Hampshire member that was in post at the time actively helped that conversation, but we're awaiting an update from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Okay, public participation, item 6. We've had no members of the public have requested to speak on this occasion. Item 7, there are 2 items of exempt information. One is in Appendix 3 of Agenda Item 14, and one is Agenda Item 17. If members wish to discuss matters contained in these items, we'll consider going into private session as and when we get to them, which will seem to be the most organised way of doing it. Item 8, the chair update. As Melanie was unable to make the meeting, as the chair's unable to make the meeting, there's no chair's update for this time, but we'll get one when she's back. So let's go on to item 9, the Foley Estate. And I'll ask Mark Alden, Nature-Based Solutions Manager, to introduce the subject.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be able to introduce my report, which is the endorsement of Foley Estate Whole Estate Plan. This can be found on page 17 of the print pack. I'll take it as read, so I won't be going through it in detail now. I'm really pleased to confirm that the Whole Estate Plan is compliant with our process, and therefore Officer recommendation is for endorsement. And now, really pleased to hand over on the Whole Estate Plan, and then happy to field any questions at the end. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. I didn't realise it'd be such a big room of people, so sorry if I'm a bit nervous. And it's lunchtime. It's lunchtime as well, which is very mean to organise this now. But thank you, Mark, and everyone really for being here. It's quite humbling that all these people here are, even if just for a part of their day, are thinking about Foley. It always. Dad always used to say it was kind of a useless bog, was how he described it, but one that we loved very much. And this whole process started for us when my dad passed away, and we had to try and work out how we can save this place. And we always felt, my brothers and I, that it could be something more than it was and is. And but the path towards sort of realizing that was quite lonely and difficult, and it's actually been the process of creating this WEP and meeting everyone at the national park has been really transformative for us. And it went from a lonely process, at a time when the mood in the British countryside is quite bleak, to one where we feel very hopeful. We have a lot of clarity over the next steps and what we want to do, and a lot of hope and excitement for how Foley could be not only kind of restored and regenerated for us and our family and my son, who's just 1 year old, but also for everyone who lives in and around it as well. I think I'm from a generation who feels a bit differently about the countryside and doesn't feel that clingy sense of wanting to sort of hold it to ourselves and keep it private and quiet, and we want to engage with people. We want kids to be coming onto the estate and learning and engaging with nature and the history and the culture of it. And this WEP, I hope, lays out that vision. It's not going to be easy. I'm not going to go into all the detail in there, but I hope you can see, if you've read it or even just skimmed through it, that we've put a lot of time into it. We didn't hire consultants to do this. My wife and I wrote this ourselves. My wife did all the illustrations and drawings in it. It's from our hearts, and it's sincerely what we hope to kind of realize. And there's a lot of big challenges, a lot of things falling down, a lot of leaking pipes, and difficult economic pressures which are affecting the farm as they are every farm across the country. But there's also huge and exciting opportunities through things like B&G, which the National Park is already helping us to engage with and progress with. We recently signed an agreement to try and restore 30 hectares of Foley through B&G, which will kickstart a lot of the ambitions that we have within the WEP. So really, there's not much more for me to say, I don't think. I hope you all had a chance to read it. I wanted it to not be a dull planning document, because I am aware that you guys deal with a lot of dull planning documents. I've only been to one committee meeting, and I was astonished by the work you guys have to put yourselves through. So I wanted it to be readable and to help people, engage with this place, and to show that we can help others do that too at some point. So, yeah, thank you. If we can pull this off, I think it will be one of the first instances of, a relatively small estate and farm, effectively regenerating and modernising in a way that will be sustainable and more accessible to everyone, and hopefully much richer in biodiversity as well. So, yeah, thank you everyone for taking the time to read it and look through it, and we hope we can continue to build on this, and as we speak, rhododendron is being ripped from the ground from reedy wood, so it's already underway. So thank you very much, everyone.
Any questions from... Yes, Vanessa.
Well, it's not a question, but it's just kind of comments. And I just want to say thank you so much for doing this, because all the time that you see us do the dry work and the governance work, which is really, really important, means that we can enable the team here and the officers here to support you guys doing what you're going to do, because you're part of the future. We need you to do that work and bring that nature back, but also the amazing thing that you and your wife are doing in terms of the ambition of educating kids about this. It's so, so crucial. So for me, your whole estate plan really embodies everything that I care about and why I'm here. So thank you. And I wish you lots of luck, both of you.
Thank you. Mark?
Thank you. Just to echo Vanessa's comments. First from me, thank you for the visit, hosting. That was my first WEP visit, and it was a really impressive one, really helpful, and left me with so much to think about. And obviously, having had the visit, now seen the plan in draft and here submitted, it's fantastic to see it develop. The artwork is phenomenal. You can pass that on. And definitely not boring, definitely not a boring read. What I'm curious about is how we can learn from the experience that you've been through as well. If there's anything you could share with us in terms of your experience of developing the web, writing the web, that we could learn from to help others who are going to come forward in the future.
I mean, finding Nick and Mark is probably the the first step, to be honest. That's where it started with us. I think one lesson from our web is it doesn't have to cost a fortune to make one. If you are able to do it yourself, you can. We were really intimidated at the beginning when we went to, various consultants and asked how much it would take to help us make a WEP, and we were given quotes of up to sort of £25,000. We didn't have the cash flow within the estate to do that. And so we had to do it ourselves. And I think it's great that if we do get an endorsement today, it does show that it is possible. And Mark and Nick have been incredibly helpful. Also, Lewis, who's not here today, was incredibly helpful, gave really detailed feedback. I mean, I was so grateful to, pages of notes for us to walk through and make corrections. Like, people really paid attention to it, and it really made a difference and helped us get it right, hopefully. So yeah, that's one thing I would say, I guess. I mean, in terms of other things, I think having, some of it, hopefully we can demystify with this WEP as well, some of the more complicated aspects. When ecosystem services was first explained to us, it was a bit like, having to, learn a GCSE or something. It's like a whole new subject that you've got to cover, and it's layered and complex and a little bit confusing, and many WEPs in the past did it different ways. So hopefully, people can understand it's not impossible to do these things. And I know a lot of neighbouring landowners and estates who would really benefit from this process as well. And I think if there are ways of helping people understand that through outreach or whatever, I think it would be beneficial. I was talking to the people who run Cowdrey Estate the other day. They'd benefit from one of these actually. And, so big and small could engage with this process. Grateful to everyone, really, and especially to Nick and Mark, who made us aware that this even existed. We had no idea initially.
That's really helpful feedback. Thank you.
Jerry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for a tremendous read and the history lessons in it and everything else. As with the visit that we had there, the passion shines through both the visit and the document you've put together there. It's clearly going to be a heck of a hard grind to make a lot of this happen. And I see from elsewhere in the agenda the Beavers project is already stalled. You've only got the 11 properties on the estate plus the pub to generate income at the moment. Clearly, whatever Mark and Nick can do to get access to other funding, that's going to be essential to you. So, yes, it's a tremendous story. It's a tremendous project that you're embarking on, and I just hope that you're successful in getting other income streams to help you make at least some of it happen, if not all of it, hopefully. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. The one thing I would say on that note is that the BNG outlook looks really hopeful for Foley. DEFRA recently updated their flooding map, and it shows that the A3, which is just half a kilometre downstream from our boundary, is a category 2 or 3. I can't remember the exact number. Flood risk. Basically, on the map, it's a big pile of blue. And so all of the water that comes through Foley concentrates into the Holly water and goes beneath a very narrow culvert underneath the A3. And the A3 has flooded. It flooded last year and was closed for a day. That will potentially get worse over time. So the grounds for and the justification for biodiversity restoration on Foley, particularly re-wetting, wiggling streams, putting beavers back into the landscape, is really strong. And the beaver issue is stalled only because the legislation changed 10 days after we submitted the application. They haven't said it's not going to happen. They've just said we need additional information, and we're gathering that information now. And things like that map will help us, and hopefully will help us secure some P&G income as well.
Yes, Tom.
Hello. So I'm right down the end here. I concur with my colleagues in terms of the plan. It really feels like a human document, which is really great, really lovely to read. And you got onto the subject of water, which defines the geography, the nature, and everything else. The first project is restoring the Holly water. But it says in year 1 that you would need to build the necessary key, or they're called the key partnerships. To what extent do those partnerships enable you or block you from proceeding? I mean, is it? I don't understand, if you like, how difficult that is as a challenge, and what support you might need to put those partnerships into place.
So the first thing we had to do was work out how our watercourse is categorised, because there's a lot of different streams and springs across the estate, and we needed to understand which bits are formally protected and therefore require planning permission to do things like rewiggling and stuff like that. Fortunately for us, the watercourse doesn't actually sort of formally begin until the very northern section of the estate. So we actually have a lot of wiggle room in the upper end of the catchment to engage in BNG funded restoration without having to face a wall of bureaucracy. There is definitely going to be bureaucracy further downstream, but I'm hopeful that through working with Mark, we can have a meeting with highways, with National Highways, who have a slightly checkered record when it comes to fulfilling B&G, and to persuade them that, somewhere like this you could do it really well, and it would have a public benefit and a huge nature benefit and educational benefit as well. And so that's the kind of partnership we'd like to form, where we could persuade a national body like that, which would ordinarily never listen to us, we could never get to them, but through working with the National Park, we might be able to sit down and have a conversation. We have a lot of support from the East Hants District Council on this issue as well, so they could potentially join the meeting. So I have been going around and talking to people. I've met with the former head of the Rivers Trust and other organisations. Similarly, the Surrey Wildlife Trust, which deals with a lot of the River Way, and the Hampshire Wildlife Trust have all been round, seen it, are excited by it. So I think we've done a lot of that networking already. And so hopefully the next step will be to use the sort of bureaucratic clout of the national park to actually get some face-to-face meetings with people where the small fish can talk to the big fish and persuade them to do something, hopefully.
Vanessa. Yes.
Sorry, I want to come back. Because that story that you just told about the difference that you can make kind of re-wetting and for the A3, that's the kind of stories that we need to be telling everybody that around here. That's kind of what we need to do in terms of climate change and climate action. And those stories aren't being told yet. And so that's really powerful. So yeah, thank you.
I've got a question maybe for Mark and Nick. Do you see our role as facilitating the sort of conversations that he's just talked about with highways and all the other interested bodies to help things move along a bit faster than they would normally?
I think the answer is yes. We are gaining quickly a solid, high-integrity reputation for delivering easy, accessible, but very reliable biodiversity units across the southeast region, and actually more wider afield, actually. But I think the last 2 years has started to enable us to have a reputation where we can have really confident conversations with the off-takers, potentially by off-takers I mean those potential purchasers. Those conversations maybe we wouldn't have been cognizant of in the early stages, but actually now a lot of our local government partners, highways, national highways, they're becoming really important stakeholders and customers for us, and really enabling nature recovery to happen on the ground. And long may that continue. I think what we see at Foley actually is unique, highly unique in terms of the habitat types and the multiple benefits, as Vanessa alludes to. And I think that's something that isn't typical nationally. So I think we're really excited about that uniqueness and that rarity, and also the kind of human side of the project, which attracts those off-takers as well. It's not just the hard sell anymore. It's the multiple benefits. It's the social side. I think that's something we're really excited about. So.
And to build on Vanessa's point, that's a fantastic story to tell for people who maybe are not familiar with how the park works. I mean, that's great. Any more questions or comments? No? Okay, well, thank you very much for coming along. An inspiring story and an inspiring document. And for those of us who went on the visit, also inspiring. I mean, I was talking about it for days afterwards. So thank you very much indeed. And we all here wish you the very, very best in making it happen. Okay, so we need to do I'm reminded on my right here, the formal recommendation. I got carried away there. So the recommendation is the committee is recommended to endorse the Foley Estate Whole Estate Plan at Appendix 1. Members in support of that recommendation? Any other votes against or abstain?
Abstain, because I wasn't involved in the process at all, I'm sorry to say, so I don't think it'd be fair for me to vote.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we move on to item 10, the South Downs Partnership Plan, and I will ask Anne to briefly remind members of the content, which has made her way to a seat. That is a good idea.
Thank you, Chair. So as you will all know, the management plan is a statutory document that the National Park Authority has a responsibility to produce, and we are under an obligation to review it every 5 years. And the intention of it really is to align the strategy and delivery of a number of organisations across the protected landscape. So it's a plan for the area, not a plan for the national park per se. We followed Natural England guidance on how to produce management plans, and we also followed very closely the recommendations of a review into how we carried out the last management plan. So we stuck very sternly to that in how we approach this, and I think it's really paid dividends this time round in the amount of engagement that we managed to get into the plan. So we started the process in 2024. We had extensive pre-engagement during late 2024 and early 2025, which incorporated the reviews and meetings with over 1,900 people, and that helped us to frame the aims and objectives that we included in the plan. I think that was a very effective process, and it really enabled us to get some positive engagement from partners, which is really key in delivering this. And also, as you will remember, staff and members were kind of incorporated into that process as one of the stakeholders. So you were consulted on your views as well, as were staff. To help us, we set up an external steering group. This was a group of key partners to help provide oversight and steer the process with us and for us. And we're very grateful to them for the insight and guidance they provided. They really did help to shape how the plan has turned out and what's in it. So I guess I would say that this plan is much more co-designed and co-produced than our previous plans have been because of that emphasis on an inclusive approach. We went out to public consultation in June and July. It closed in August this year. We had 458 responses to that, and encouragingly 112 of those were from partners, which is, I think, far more engagement than we've had in the past, and 346, that's not right, yeah, 346 from the public. We used the same consultation platform that colleagues used in the local plan, which I think proved useful and people were familiar with it. And as a result of that consultation, Ruth did an absolutely sterling job along with colleagues in reworking the plan, changing what was in it. And I think what was useful from the feedback was the degree of agreement with those aims and objectives. So 83% of partners and 80% of the public agreed that the priorities that we put into the plan looked right for the next 5 years. And you can obviously see the result of that in the revised plan that you've got at Appendix 3. I've given you some more detail about the changes to the targets, just so you can see what changed, what stayed the same, what was taken out, because we did make quite a lot of changes at that point as a result of what the people from the consultation were saying and also what the steering group fed back to us. Interestingly, quite a lot of the challenge was around being a bit more ambitious, which was quite pleasing. So we took the opportunity to make the targets more ambitious in some cases and change the nuance in others. As this is a statutory plan, there are assessments that are required as part of this process, and all of those various assessments were carried out for us by ACOM as the plan has gone along. And The good news for us is that no significant impacts were identified at that time. You have seen the integrated assessment report. You got that in May when the authority approved the plan for public consultation. It takes resource to do this sort of exercise, and you'll see in the resources section of the plan quite considerable expenditure, not only in terms of budget, but in terms of staff resource. But I would argue that actually that investment is worth it in terms of the amount of buy-in that we have gained from partners, the positive conversations that we have had. And I guess I would make a recommendation that when we go forward to do management plans in the future, we consider making sure that we safeguard that level of resource to enable that type of process to happen again in the future. So I'm not going to go through any more detail. You have the plan in front of you, you have the change, you have the report of the consultation, so you can see. And really what we're asking for today is that you recommend that the National Park Authority approve the Partnership Management Plan at its meeting in December.
Thank you very much, Anne. Before I go to questions, can I just one clarification? This is not the absolute final version. There's some proofreading to go on and one or two adjustments. Is that right?
Yes. So, I mean, all feedback is welcome at this stage because it's interesting. You know, you read something a few times and there's always something that you miss. But yes, what we're bringing to members really is the main text of the document. This is not what the finished document is going to look like. We've got all sorts of amazing plans for that, including a digital version. But you're right, Stephen, if there are any things that you pick up, there obviously needs to be a final proofread for the version that will go to the NPA in December. But if any of the eagle-eyed among you have spotted anything, please let us know, because it's easy to miss. So yeah, not the absolute final, but I guess what I'm asking for here, if there's any substantive changes, which I'm hoping at this stage possibly there won't be, but any matters of detail, you know, let us know outside the meeting. That would be really helpful.
Okay, any questions or comments, please? Yes, John.
I've already spoken to Anne about, I've read the whole document and edited various things, and I'll pass this on to Ruth at the end. But what I wanted to talk about, there were 3 points that I wanted to make about content. So on page 195, and it's about accessibility to the park. It doesn't make any reference to accommodation. I'm thinking mainly for visitors and tourists, and surely that's about accessibility as well. So I wondered why that would be excluded from that. So that was point 1. Page 202, objective 6.2, the headline there talks about through archaeology, traditional crafts, contemporary arts and diverse storytelling, and yet none of the text actually talks about traditional crafts. And I, again, just bring that to your attention because it seems odd to have it in the title but then not to have it in the text. And the third point I wanted to make, which I was talking to Richard, our monitoring officer, it was on page 206, and it makes reference to the LVEP, the Local Visitor Economy Partnership. And I don't know if anybody else in the room can shed any light on this, but I've heard the rumours that the strategic authorities would probably take over the role of the LVEPs. So I was concerned that this was going to be in this document and be out of date before it's even published, if there's going to be a new arrangement for how the local visitor economy is going to be run. And the other final point was no mention of a DMO, Destination Management Organisation. Are we one, or and should we be one, as a way of promoting tourism and visitors to the park?
Thanks, John. Anne, do you want to take those?
Thank you. Thanks, John. That's really helpful. On the last point, we're not a DMO, I don't think. So that's to answer that question directly for you. I think the way this is framed, I mean, Ruth can probably answer better than me because she had the detailed conversations with the team who put this together. But the target around the LVEP is a really important one. So actually, if anyone has got any information about whether LVEPs are going to be surviving into the future, that would be useful to know because we might well need to change that target. And I take your point about traditional crafts being mentioned in a target and not in the text. I mean, we can absolutely take that away and have a look at it. But as I did mention to you, and I had a chat with you earlier today, you know, that is also picked up in the kind of skills development area that's in AIM 4. But I do take your point about it not being kind of specifically mentioned in the text, so we can certainly address that if you think it's important.
James?
Well, I was just going to say, I don't think we have the detail on whether the LVEPs will exist or whether the mayoral authorities will take them over. So I think it's a bit hard to address that now, but we could put some wording in along the lines of or other equivalent bodies that's a kind of catch-all. But I think it is a challenge with any 5-year plan that ultimately things do become out of date, and I guess that's where the corporate plan comes in to make sure we can flex and adjust as necessary. So it's always strategy and opportunity, isn't it, and balancing those things.
Thank you.
Thanks, James. I think that's a really good point. And I think also, you know, we can adjust the management plan if we have to. So I think, you know, that's important to also bear in mind. You know, this isn't set in stone necessarily. It's obviously our set of ambitions with partners for the next 5 years. But if something significant changes, and let's face it, something significant probably will change during the life of this management plan, with partners, we can sit down and take the opportunity to just think about whether we need to change anything and make that decision collectively. So that's always, we have that flexibility as well.
On the LVEP, my information comes from the DMO for Chichester, the Great Sussex Way, who also sits on the LVEP itself, and it's their belief that they won't survive. So, and the other thing is, nobody mentioned about the accommodation as being part of the accessibility. That point wasn't raised.
Thank you. That's really helpful. We'll put in the wording or equivalent body for the LVEP. That's a really helpful suggestion. Thank you.
Accommodation.
Well, do you want to take about accommodation? Because I do think.
So the question was around why accommodation wasn't included. Yeah.
Yes.
So the question was in the accessibility area. We talk about cycling, walking, and transport, and et cetera, but I think accessibility is also about having accommodation for the visitors and tourists to the area as well. So if we haven't got that accessibility, then we're excluding people in all economic categories.
Yeah, we can certainly go back and look at the text. I think the thing to say about the access is it's such a huge area. So when we were having discussions, well, the whole way through the PMP, really, it was about how do we create something, and Anne's very right, that it's going to be a living plan. It's not going to be done, put on a shelf, and then we don't look at it. And that's very much why we're trying to do the digital version. But also, we wanted to have it broad enough so all partners can contribute to it, but not so broad that it means nothing or, you know, nobody can latch on to it. So under access, we looked to focus on what were the priority areas over the next 5 years here in the South Downs. So that's why we have highlighted some areas more than most, because there's and the areas that came up most strongly in the consultation from our partners and from the public, which is about the ability to be able to get to the national park, that concept of that last mile. So we tried to address those issues that are most pertinent, that people are saying are making access most difficult. But absolutely, I can go back and look at the text as well to make sure at least it would have some mention.
Sorry to come back
Okay,
again.
okay.
So In the document, it says that, I acknowledge it says in the document, this is a really difficult area because a lot of it's out of our control. And that's why I thought the accommodation is within our control to a certain extent, because we can, perhaps through the local plan, prioritise areas where campsites, caravan sites, whatever, could be located closer to transport links or cycle routes or what have you. So that's sort of where I was coming at it from there. I don't know how achievable that is and whether I'm living in a fantasy land, I don't know.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, Kate's joined us now. This shows you how cross-organisational this is. So you're quite right, John. I think this is probably something that we picked up in the local plan rather than the management plan. But I don't know, Kate, if you wanted to. Sure, yeah.
So we have a policy in the local plan which allows for a visitor accommodation to come forward under certain circumstances, particularly prioritising sustainable locations and where it's regenerative tourism. So that's what the policy is focusing on. That's backed up by a wider visitor accommodation study that's been recently undertaken, that's recently published on the website. So those things work together to facilitate tourism accommodation.
John, can I just ask, is that okay, or do you think it's worth us making a link between the PMP and the local plan? Because I'm sure we can do that. Ooh, sorry.
Yep, sorry. Yeah, I did wonder that as you were saying that the two documents obviously overlap slightly there, and perhaps there should be a link.
Okay, we'll take that away and make sure there's a signpost between the two, because so that we can see that.
Thank you, Sean. Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Just as a thread that I noted about cultural heritage in the plan before the meeting, we've had a very rich discussion. We've had a very rich discussion this morning related to cultural heritage that sort of made it sort of come up for me even more strongly. And just interesting looking at the numbers here, that part on it's page 136 in the pack, that partners noted underrepresentation of built heritage. Public engagement was lower with calls for more inclusive storytelling, and the numbers of public agreement were 61%, so on the kind of lower side. But then when you look at the plan, and this is the bit I can't quite get my head around, there's almost an overemphasis on the built heritage. You know, it's kind of front and centre. The numbers are there. There's a very helpful infographic as well, which really explains the rich built heritage that we have. So I can't quite understand why partners don't think we've got enough of an emphasis on it. That's, I guess, my first question. If it's front and centre, and it feels very much like we're out there with it. And then secondly, on the point around more diverse, and obviously there's all the numbers there about finance as well. And further down, we've got objectives, I think it's 6.1 on page 50 of the plan. Nope, sorry. Apologies, it's objective 6.2. 2,000 people engaged in nature and landscape through arts and heritage engagement activities by 2031. So my first question is, how have people kind of missed that we are very much focused on the built heritage and care about it? Why do they think we need to do more? It looks to me as if we're doing enough. And then this whole point around inclusive storytelling, are we being ambitious in 6.2A? With that number by 2031, and have I missed something, or have you got my thread?
I think we've got the thread there. I mean, this has been one of the interesting. I'll let Ruth come in on this. This has been one of the interesting chapters to write for various reasons. Partly because of that split between the kind of physical assets and the kind of less tangible assets that you might call them around cultural heritage. I think in all of our targets, actually, we've been challenged to be more ambitious. And I think that is an ambitious target. And we might not hit it. But I think, and I would say this for quite a few of the targets in here, because we've kind of made them more ambitious, there's a chance that we won't hit them. But I think we have to be comfortable with that, because I think, actually, if you don't aim high, then you always fall short. So I think, yes, it's ambitious, but we can at least show how we got towards it. But I'll let Ruth talk to you a little bit more about how that chapter was put together.
And also, sorry, just a bit about how people
I think it is just, yeah, I mean, we could we could go into the nth degree of detail, which I'm not going to do, about what came back from the consultation, and it was actually quite mixed because different people do value different things, and I think cultural heritage means different things to different people. So I think we tried our best to reflect what came back in the feedback, as well as what our experts were telling us about where the priorities should lie. So that's kind of how we balanced that out in the end.
Yeah, so as Anne said, the cultural heritage aim was the one that changed the most, both in terms of the text and the outcomes after the consultation. And that was also working with the steering group and the expert that we had on the steering group. I think what came across, so we tend, as a national park, to think of cultural heritage as that full remit from the built heritage to the creation of arts and culture, whereas, as Anne said, for other people, it might be one very specific area of that. So they think our priority should just be on the built heritage. And when we had originally drafted it, there wasn't enough clear separation, I think, for people to be able to see the two different aspects. So I worked with our cultural heritage lead, and based on consultation and feedback, and a lot of very detailed feedback from Heritage England, which was really helpful. And we separated those out, and we created one objective that was more clearly about built heritage and one that was more about the creation of culture. And in terms of that, the target, it is very ambitious because these are people that would be directly engaged with. It's very labour intensive and time intensive to work with people because it needs time. You know, our writer in residence work that we did at Seven Sisters is a really good example of that. But we are going to be connecting people through culture and heritage in different ways. This is people that will be doing it directly, so yeah, it wouldn't just be those. But
bear in mind as well, that's not just work that we're doing, this is work that partners will be doing as well, just to clarify that point.
Jerry.
Thank you, Chair. I think the document's really, really good on the what. And clearly, you know, as you've just said, a lot of consultation's gone into that and a lot of work's gone into it. But right at the top of the thing, it does say that, you know, it takes a village to bring up a child or whatever. It's all about partnership. That's great. So on page 12, we've got a small paragraph on how it will be delivered. And it just strikes me that that small paragraph is doing one heck of a lot of heavy lifting. And I'd be interested to know, firstly, at what stage of gestation the delivery guidelines are at, because you, Chair, and I have some limited experience of working in one of these partnership vehicles, and I think our experience, and correct me if I've got this wrong, Stephen, but there's a lot of frustration that we go to each meeting and not a great deal of progress has been achieved on each of the sort of micro projects, if I can put it that way. And in our discussions this morning, we were just saying, if the authorities got any great role to play in all this, it's actually exercising some leadership over our partners in a relatively subtle way, such that they're not, they don't feel they're being dictated to, but nonetheless, we need that leadership role to ensure that we're making progress against each of those targets that you've got in this plan. So I think those guidelines on how this will be delivered are going to be pretty crucial. And as I say, I'd be curious to know what stage of development they're at. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will be talking a bit more about that in December when I bring the full plan, because we do have a proposal for how to develop delivery with partners, and what we're proposing to have is a delivery plan. So the guidance that Natural England produced for national park authorities on how to do management plans also suggested that if we wanted to, we could have a delivery plan. So we've chosen to have one. And what we want to do is work with our partners to populate that delivery plan, which will say, probably at quite a high level, because, you know, we don't want to be capturing like every single tree here. But for the major partners, for the big bits of delivery that they are going to do, we'll have a plan that sets out quite clearly who the partner is, what it is they're going to be delivering, and what that is going to be contributing to the management plan targets. So because we've done the whole process of the management plan in a very collaborative way so far, in the way that we've developed it, Similarly, we want to take that approach with a delivery plan. So we don't want to kind of write a delivery plan, put partners in it and say, right, this is what you're going to deliver, even though we have had some of those commitments through the conversations that we've had with people throughout the summer. But I know, for example, one of our major partners has asked to sort of sit down in the new year and talk about how they can align their strategy to ours. And so through those conversations is how we will start to populate the delivery plan. We're also setting up a kind of new mechanism to oversee the delivery of the management plan. So building on from the steering group, which was brilliant in the way that it worked through the development of the plan, we're going to kind of keep it and expand it. And I think that's probably the plan at the moment, is for that to meet annually, to actually do that sense check, to look at the delivery plan that we will have developed together with them. So we have the convening kind of leadership role, I guess. We can bring these people together, we can get them to make those commitments, put it into that delivery plan, and then work together with them to monitor it on an annual basis. We've got lots of existing kind of networks and groups of organisations that we work with as well, and what we want to do at a more granular level is work with them to make sure that they are also looking at what's in the management plan, how they can deliver it. So I hope that reassures you that we kind of have thought about how we want to do this, but we want to develop that plan collaboratively with the partners. And it will change over time. You know, things will happen. People put bids in for projects, they won't happen. They'll do something else, you know. So this is going to be a really flexible document, I think, that will, you know, change over time, probably from year to year. But that's the plan at the moment for how we capture that and how we get information from partners about what they're delivering as well.
Sean?
Just a couple of things, Jeremy. It's a really good question, and it's one I'm really keen to get right, the answer, you know, taking this forward. The first bit, I think, is the shift from, I'm not sure there was guidance before, but certainly in the guidance that we've now received, what we've had overseeing previous plans didn't necessarily constitute a group of delivery partners, but more sort of an oversight body. The shift now is that if you're going to be part of that group, you also have to bring something to the party, so you've got to be part of the delivery, which I think is really key because there's skin in the game. I think the leadership point is a really important one. I think there's a real appetite from partners for us to take a leading convening role, but being quite bold in terms of what we're setting out. And I think there's also something that they see a benefit in being part of the delivery of the plan, in the sense that if they are even, let's say, arguing for resources within their own organisation, if they can add how they are contributing to our plan, you know, they see that as a real benefit in terms of winning that argument. And we're sort of I'm having quite a few conversations along that line, that people are saying this is really helpful because I can say not only is this part of our priorities, but it's contributing to AIM, you know, 7 or AIM 3 or whatever for the national park. So I'm feeling quite optimistic about how that's going to go, but we really need to make sure we keep pushing that in and pushing ourselves in there and leading them through. But so far it seems to be received really, really well.
Laura, did you want to have a...
I just wanted to agree with you, Jerry, that partnership is hard. I think I say that quite a lot. It is hard, it's time-consuming, it's difficult. People are coming from different perspectives with different workloads and different capacity, and it is difficult. But what you just heard Anne describe is layers and layers of activity, not plans, although there will be plans, but activity. And what we wanted right at the beginning is to have a PMP and a delivery plan that didn't sit on the shelf, that didn't gather dust, but that was actually a live document. And this is what Anne and Ruth and the rest of the team have been really actively kind of driving to achieve, that it is very much kind of a living, breathing, active performance. But it's hard.
John.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to come back. It's a really interesting and fascinating read, the document, and I take my hat off to those that have got it this far. There's a lot of work gone into this. So what I say is, I hope not a criticism, but one thing I'm confused about are the targets, because some of them seem to be, well, a lot of them seem to be out of our control, and so they just come across as being slightly nebulous. There's nothing we can do about it, but they're there. And then others are very much ones that we set. And as Mark has got me onto this page, I'll just for an example, on page 202 and 203, so the targets for 6.1 all seem to be nothing we can do. They're all things that are already set, although we could set our own targets. Whereas on the opposite page, they're very much the things that we can do. And I just think, in the document, the final document, is it going, I don't know how they're going to be colour coordinated, so that there's ones that we are achieving and ones that we seek to achieve on behalf of other organisations, or picking up on the aspirations of other organisations.
So I think the first thing to say about all of these targets is these are targets for us and our partners, so they're joint ones. Well, I'm going to say this politely now. So some of the targets are set for us by DEFRA. So we have something called the Protected Landscapes Outcomes and Targets Framework. And national park authorities have to build into their management plans those targets. And interestingly, some of the examples that you've chosen, 6.1 is one of those. So we don't have a choice about that one. We have to collect it. Because that's what the government has asked all national park authorities, or all protected landscapes actually, to collect. And there are a number of those, and they're quite clearly marked in the text where they are these protected landscapes outcomes frameworks. So you're right, there is a bit of a difference between some of the targets, and that's because we are, I think, probably the first. There are other national parks who have just done their management plans. I think we're probably the first one to be able to fully incorporate the pulled-off targets into our plan. So that's what we've done. So that's why I think that might explain some of the difference, because some of those are ones that we don't have control of, and we actually get national data to enable us to report on. So that might explain that. The other ones are ones that we think, with partners, we want to measure as a way of indicating whether we have achieved those objectives. So I think that's possibly why you're seeing a difference between some of them, because some of them are very specific, and I guess the others that we have to have maybe less so, because they come from existing data sets that government already have and that Natural England already have. So there are 10 of those targets that we've had to incorporate across the plan.
Anne, I have a question that, if I may. My favourite subject, which is the water area, the target 3.1A by 2031, all catchment partnerships have the resources, etc. That's 5 years. That seems awfully long time. Have you been talking to them? Is that something they sort of concur with?
I think the short answer is yes, but I'm sure Sean and others can come in on that one, because we have discussed these targets with relevant partners, and there was a water company sitting on the steering group. So those representatives very much shaped how these targets and how that section was crafted, because ultimately they're going to be responsible for delivering a lot of it. Mm. So yes, we have got the buy-in.
You don't feel they're kicking the can down the road a little bit?
No, I don't think they are. I think these are achievable, because if you think about catchment partnerships and the resources they might need, and then developing deliverable projects, that's actually quite some considerable time that is going to be required to do that, because you have to get the resources, then you have to resource putting the project ideas together, and we all know that that's quite a lengthy process. Okay.
James might want to come in on this, but just to give an example, we're working to develop a lottery heritage fund project, the Big Chalk. Now, the time frame for developing that project is 3 to 4 years, and a lot of that will go into water catchment projects. So it looks like quite a long time frame, but actually the lead-in to getting that resource in place at the scale we need to get it at, can be quite long.
Yeah, thank you. And then a sort of follow-up question again, if I may. How does that link with target 3.2A? Because we want to achieve high or good status for the water bodies by 2027, but the resources may not be in place till 2031.
I'll let Sean come in on this one as well. But again, this is one of those really stretching ones. And this is where we're kind of making a point that this is definitely a target that people would want to hit, but it requires an awful lot of resource, and it's potentially one of those ones that we're likely to miss. But what we want to do by creating a highlight on it, by setting this target, is to bring it to people's attention, to sort of make the point that this is actually important. But I will let Sean come in on that one.
I mean, it's what Anne said. We know we're going to miss this target. It's a nationally set target under the Water Directive framework. Yeah. We expect that will change because it's unrealistic. Even if you were to do all the things you needed to do in the next 24 hours to manage the water catchments so that the water quality had a chance of being good, the lag time for all of the chemicals and all of the microplastics and whatever else, the forever chemicals to go through the soil would mean that we wouldn't get to this point. But by missing it, we want to highlight the scale of the challenge and the fact that actually we need something that's going to be more realistic. Now, that doesn't mean to say we won't measure things below this that will measure progress against water quality. And that's going to be the real focus, and we're going to make sure that we can see a pathway to, if you take the 2027 out, a pathway to all water bodies within the national park to achieve high or good. The thing that we need to sort of renegotiate, I guess, is that 2027. If we can achieve this by 2027, brilliant. But I think it's physically probably impossible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
But given it's a nationally sort of given out target, we thought we would not try and make up a new one for ourselves, but keep this one for the time being.
And as you say, it will shine a light on the issue. Any more? Yes, Tom.
Thank you. On the theme of targets that we don't have any choice about, 2.1, reduce net greenhouse gas emissions in South Downs National Park to net zero by 2040 relative to 1990 levels. How long is that going to be a target at a national level? Net zero is obviously a politically live term, and lots of strong views expressed about it. And in the not too distant future, this organisation will operate probably in a different sort of political firmament at a regional as well as a national level, certainly by 2040. I note in the consultation responses that, and there's a bit of a difference between the report and the consultation responses and the summary at page 135, but the comment against climate action is that partners supported net zero ambition but questioned feasibility. Public found language too technical and targets unrealistic, with minus 13% level of agreement with the target. I don't know if this is a comment or a question, but it's certainly a concern of mine that actually, if you think about the numbers of the public that really responded to this, were relatively small given the population of the park. If we did a survey of the public, I would think that probably the adherence or support of net zero is probably a lot lower than is indicated here. And given that really this is part of the shop window of the National Park Authority, its partnership management plan is a really important public-facing document. I just wonder if consideration should be given to the language around all of that. I haven't got a solution, I'm sorry. I just think I see we work with local authorities all around the country, and there's a terrific amount of re-evaluation of language and tone going on around the whole subject of net zero in inverted commas, depending on what you think it means.
I'm extremely comfortable with the use of language here, and I don't propose that we would water it down in any way. I think it's really important that we're ambitious for net zero, that we don't pretend that the climate crisis isn't a problem, and we don't change our language to suggest that is because we're worried a little bit about the political mood. I think particularly as a national park, that's important. Apart from the national target that we have committed to, we've also signed up to Race to Zero under the UN initiative as all national parks. So regardless, I think, of what happens regionally or nationally, that's a commitment we will want to stand by.
Proposing it's chucked out of the plan or anything like that, it just strikes me as a chord of the consultation feedback.
I'll just make the point, though, that in the consultation, there was a concern, I think, from a number of people that the public would be sceptical about climate change. But actually, the issue wasn't so much that. It was that they didn't think we were being ambitious enough. So I think we were quite surprised, pleasantly surprised by the fact that that's what the feeling was from the public. If you read the kind of detailed comments, that's more what it was about, rather than having scepticism about climate change itself.
Thank you, Chair. I think also we all have to remember that a consultation exercise is not a referendum. We invite consultation responses, we take them seriously and reflect on them, but we're not, of course, bound by the outcome. So to pick up Sean's point, whatever the responses might be about net zero, we, as I say, are not bound by those. We just have to conscientiously take them into account, and then we adopt our own position.
Thank you. Wise words, thank you. Vanessa.
I've got to chip in. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard, isn't it? But I think for us, what the National Park is going to be bringing to the net zero kind of contribution is the stuff that we're doing with the nature-based solutions and kind of trying to kind of lock in more carbon, create, you know, those carbon sinks and things like that, rather than stopping people travelling and that kind of argument. I think that's how I kind of see it. And I agree with Sean, we've got to stick to our guns on this. This is really, really important, and we've got to show leadership across this area. The mayors are going to have the net zero brief, but I don't know how much of a priority it's going to be for them. But, you know, it's so important. But I think it's also the stories that we tell and how that... sorry, I'm watching you guys all chatting away. Yeah, it's part of what we've got to do in showing leadership is actually what this means. So all the general public saying, yeah, we support this, we support this, we support this, haven't actually got to the next stage of what that actually looks like around them and the things that the landscape is probably going to change around them. And actually we have to bring them along on those difficult journeys, which actually when it comes down to it in your area, they're not all going to be up for, but it's really important. And so going back to, you know, Foley and all the things that are happening, us being able to tell that story, that climate leadership story is really, really important.
Thank you.
One of the things I was going to say, you're absolutely right, Vanessa, we've got to bring people with us. So one of the things we're talking to the climate team about is a campaign, once the PMP launches, about how do we bring people and help them to contribute to that 2040. The really important thing to say, Sean mentioned about Race to Zero. This is a science-backed target. It's based on a report done by a consultancy, so it isn't plucked from the air. So the PL2 off the government target is 2050, ours is 2040. And if Chris Fairbrother were here, our climate lead, he would say that is challenging, but it is achievable. But we have signed up, so we have done the research for each of the national parks, and together, based on that, we have signed up to Race for Zero together and made that international commitment. So while it is stretching, this is absolutely one of probably the most science-based targets that we have with the most information behind it.
Did you want to speak? Me first. I just wanted to add that to your point, Tom, around, you know, how the language should be framed and what's our ambition and how do people feel. We have this staff environment group now, and the overwhelming kind of approach to all of this is we need to get things done. There is a sense of ambition, of hope, of optimism, but there is also a sense of this is enormous and how we're going to put this into bite-sized chunks, and how we're going to build a plan that is achievable. And I would say that we've got a lot to do, but we've started to think beyond the work that we have been doing and the data that we have been reporting, to say, actually, we need to think about the baselines that we have had in place and how those have changed for us. And we also need to think about the good stuff that is going on and how we record that and how that balances that, to your point, Vanessa, you know, about trees, but beyond that as well. And we're looking at methodology to start piloting that so we can capture that good stuff as well. And then beyond that, it's about how we work with communities to enable them to do more too. So there is a lot of thinking going on, but it is a huge, huge initiative that we can't underestimate.
Yeah, go on, James.
I was just thinking about your points, Vanessa, and I think, I mean, currently, to a degree, we're speculating, aren't we, in terms of what the public and political mood might be going forward. I would have argued, I think, that currently, you know, net zero is a target we need to be delivering. Now, that may change. I think, from our perspective, we then need to be flexing and managing exactly what you say, how we tell the story, because a lot of the activities that we're going to be undertaking towards net zero actually have real benefits for people. It's creating more woodland, it's community energy, which will help reduce your bills. It's all good things. And I think you're right. Some of the narrative out there that's gaining traction is that it's actually going to be more expensive and you're not going to be able to, you know, get your car charged or what have you. So I think part of our job is definitely going to be combating that, and we obviously have to be alert to the winds of change and be flexible about it. But I think we also probably have to be honest with ourselves that the target needs to remain, and we need to stand for that whilst trying to bring people with us.
Yeah, it goes back to multiple benefits and the story of the A3 and things that actually affect your day-to-day life, sitting in traffic or getting water out the tap. That's how you frame it. And unfortunately, maybe the net zero is loaded and people will kind of, you know, it's going to be tricky. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the mayor elections, actually. We need to watch what happens with that, with the language that's used and the way it kind of, how the candidates get across their messages. I think that will be really interesting. Look, it's about the outcomes, right? I don't care. Let's just get those. It doesn't matter. Just get the outcomes. Thank you.
Okay. Maybe we'll bring this item, if there's no more questions, to close now. Now, as the document, this is not the final document, there may be some tweaks required from the comments made by committee and also a sort of sense check and a proofread and so on. I'd like to introduce a second recommendation. Shall I read it out there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you want to read it out, just with that additional bit to pick
Yeah.
up the points we made earlier.
So the second recommendation is to delegate authority to the Director of Landscape and Strategy in consultation with the Chair of the P&R Committee to make any minor amendments to the Partnership Management Plan 2026-2031 and to review the text in relation to accommodation and traditional crafts prior to its consideration by the National Park Authority at the next NPA meeting. Should we...
Well, we need a proposer and a seconder.
A proposer and a seconder, please.
For that recommendation.
Mark and Jerry, thank you. And can I have a vote of hands, please, for that recommendation? That's good, thank you.
And then take them all
Okay,
together.
so we'll take them all together now in the final vote. I won't read it out, you can read it there. So there's two recommendations. The first is we recommend to the NPA to approve, and the second is the one that I've just relayed to you. So can I have votes in favour, please? Thank you. Any votes against? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Right, we've been going for a while now. Shall we have a shakeout? And I certainly need to warm my feet up because they've just gone numb. So we'll have a couple of minutes, that's all. Thank you. Okay, on to item 11, which is review of the Procurement Strategy Action Plan. And I'd like to ask Vicky Turner to remind members of the report content.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry Hayley's not around to present this. I dare say, I hope I'll do her justice anyway. The procurement strategy is a 5-year piece of work. We are currently at the end of year 4 and we're entering into year 5. So the document that we've presented to you summarises the activity that's been going on in the last year, which is mostly focused on accommodating and making sure that we're up to date with the the new Procurement Act, and in determining what our Scope 3 emissions are. This is related to the carbon emissions from any goods and services that we procure. Next year, we're intending to deliver a sustainable procurement strategy, and there's steps identified in the paper that Hayley's developed that take us to that point, and that should be the end of this current procurement strategy action plan. So if anybody has any questions, I will do my best to answer them for you.
Any questions on the report in front of you? Yes.
I was just going to ask and sorry, John asked me to ask this because he had to leave. So in the strategy, but this is going to be reviewed presumably because it's coming, this 5 years coming to an end. I'm just going to flag, we've got this thing about green skills in our partnership management plan, and then could that be woven into the social goals? Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
I do. I do know what you mean. And the social values element is what we're trying to develop in the final year of this, alongside because that's part of the sustainability target. But we can certainly link it to the PMPs and the local plans that you've been discussing today.
Vicky, a question for me. The best practice element of the social value contributions, you said we've done some research into best practice. Is that other authorities, or is there a sort of standard approach?
I can't speak about a standard approach, but as I understand it, this is about putting into contracts with our suppliers and providers something that evidences their contribution to social value in their environment or ours.
Okay, thank you. Oh.
Sorry, another question. You know, with the Procurement Act, I haven't read it, but I mean, it's a good thing. But it does, like, basic question. So, does every public authority are kind of going on these lines and have to basically very similar kind of strategies to ours? Sorry, it's a really basic question.
If we're spending public money, we have to abide by the Procurement Act. How that develops in each individual organisation might be subject to their operations, I'd imagine. So there will be people around the country doing the same as us, without a doubt.
I always get really excited about it because I think it's quite a powerful tool if lots of people are kind of coming, you know, the demand on suppliers to match these things could be really powerful, yeah. Sorry, I do really get excited about this.
I think that's true, especially when we consider our non-pay expenditure. It's a significant chunk of money over revenue and capital and projects. So we're showing a lot of investment in these people, and we need to make sure we're getting it right.
That's good. That's good. Okay, any more comments, questions? Yes, Mark.
Sorry to delay. Just, it might be out of scope of this area of procurement at the moment, or certainly the area thing we're looking at the moment. Something that I've come across in the past when working with outside bodies is ensuring not just that they're compliant with things like minimum wage, but compliant with like the national living wage and those sorts of things, for example, as a way of ensuring that we've got a healthy supply chain that's looking after its workers rather than just necessarily the organisations that are supplying into the organisation. Is that covered as part of our procurement practice?
there are a number of conditions that any of our suppliers have to meet, and those are detailed in any tender submission that we request from any of our potential suppliers. So they're screened on that basis, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, shall we proceed to the recommendation, which you can see on the screen there? So we're recommended to note progress against the Procurement Strategy Action Plan during year 4 of the plan that Vicky outlined. And secondly, approve the revised Procurement Strategy Action Plan year 5 for now to November 26. So can I have all those in favour, please? Thank you. Any abstentions or votes against? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Vicky. Okay, we've got Anne back. And Rebecca, hello. And this time we're on the performance and projects report for 25-26.
Right. Oh, thank you, Chair. This is the last time you hear from me today. I'm just need to reassure you of that. I'll be gone after this. So this is the performance report for quarters 1 and 2. As you know, we report twice a year now on performance, so we roll up a couple of quarters when we do it. You're also aware that at the moment we report against our corporate plan, so we have 3 higher level targets in that plan which show progress towards the current management plan, and 4 corporate priority areas, and you can see, you'll be familiar with the fact that we have corporate priorities targets for those as well. We've got a very helpful summary of progress for you on page 244. Interesting to note your conversations about RAG status earlier, so hopefully this is a helpful indicator which does then provide a bit more detail for you. So I think I just draw a couple of things to your attention, particularly around HLT1 and the 13,000 hectares of additional land managed for nature by 2030, and I think the 30% of existing core nature sites and species recovered by 2030. Where we find ourselves is that we now have, I'm going to say that acronym again, PULTOF targets for these now. So this is Protected Landscapes Outcomes Framework targets for these. So that's going to be a changed measure going forward, just so you are aware. And I guess I would also draw to your attention, we do have a couple of red areas here on the delivery. So one's around, and interestingly, given the conversation we've just had around the management plan around carbon and climate, so a couple of those are to do with that. So the first one is around the kind of reduction in our carbon footprint to 150 tonnes per annum. Interestingly, we've actually done quite a lot of construction work over the last year, most notably at Seven Sisters, but other things too. So it's actually likely that our carbon footprint will go up because of that. So I guess that's just something to note, and I think we'll recalibrate once we know where we're at with all of that building work. And then with the carbon footprint for the national park, so you've got 2 things here. You've got a target that we set ourselves for ourselves, and then we've got a target that we set for the park that we kind of measure ourselves against. That's seen a small rise rather than the kind of reduction that we were hoping for. So I think we just need to keep on working with our communities. And again, as we mentioned in the discussion about the management plan, trying to make sure that we emphasise that work with communities and other organisations to help bring that overall target down. I think there's also probably an uptick in carbon sequestration, which might, with tree planting and such like, and biodiversity net gain measures that we put in place, that might actually have an impact on that, but it will take a little while to come through. I'm looking at Rebecca. She's looking at me as if she wants to say something. Do you want to say something? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say actually that
This is also about the data that we can gather. So at the moment, we don't have the sequestration data, but we will be having it next year. So this is red because we don't have the data and evidence to say otherwise at this point. So hopefully by this point next year, we've got Small World Consulting working on more tools and more ways to give us more data. So hopefully we'll have a more positive outcome this time next year because we'll be able to capture some of the positive things happening, which we can't at the moment.
I can carry on or we can stop here, I don't mind, whichever. Yeah, yeah.
I should have looked at you, Stephen. I'm so sorry. God. When you get that data, Rebecca, that's going to be so interesting to see that split out, because then that starts showing us as a kind of place doing kind of working hard for the country, delivering on the kind of trying to get us to net zero. But, you know, we're going to have things in the future, like if there's growth and the housing that's going to be built and everything like that, it's going to be really hard, isn't it? But if we can show that the really hard stuff that we're doing and the contribution, that's going to be really powerful. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
Right, I'll carry on. Thank you for that. So that was just the kind of the overview. I guess I'd also just draw to your attention that income generation continues with its success, and that's spread across multiple sources. And I think, as we've already discussed today, Biodiversity Net Gain BNG is actually developing really well for us. And just to note, with a lot of that work, we only report once a year. So just to bear in mind that you wouldn't necessarily expect to hear about some of this at this point in the year, but you will hear about it when we do year-end reporting. What you've also got in this report, alongside the performance against the corporate plan, is some information about the projects that are running. So we've currently got 38 projects in delivery, most of which are doing okay, and that's set out in section 4 of the paper for you. We've got 7 which are amber, and the most common reasons, I guess, for these, if you can find something, a common theme, is dependency on external partners and resource constraints around those partners. Again, as we were talking about in relation to the management plan, does have a big impact. If something happens to a partner, it sometimes means that a project or a piece of work can't be delivered. So that's potentially why a number of those are amber, is due to those kind of external influences. And then we've got one project which is red. This is the kind of beaver enclosure project. And that's basically because, well, I guess it's the same thing really. We're waiting for Natural England licences on that one. So there's literally nothing we can do until we get the appropriate licences. So that's just waiting for that to happen. Just in terms of resources, you've noted already, but just a reminder that the strategic fund is now closed. We are going to review that as part of the budget setting process, and whether there's going to be any money put into that this year or not, we're not sure yet, but we'll leave that to the budget process. And I guess other things to note is the very welcome reintroduction of apprenticeships. So we've got 3 apprenticeships running this year as part of the Downs to the Sea project, and they're based in our area teams. And we've made some quite good improvements to our induction process, and we're looking forward, I say this with some trepidation because it will apply to me, to line manager guidance for line managers to support consistency of approach across the organisation. That's in your HR update. So you've got the report there, you've got some examples and kind of explanations of what's contributing to the performance, and in the appendices, as we were talking about this morning, you have a graphic and you have the beginnings of a dashboard to provide you with the information in a slightly different way.
Apologies, any questions? Yes.
So I'm just looking at figure 1 on page 244, and I was just seeing in 2025, I mean, it's really good that all the, like you've got 269 hectares, can't say the word, of habitat that's been improved. I mean, I think that's really good, but it says that 278 have been put forward, but only 2 have been, 2 new ones. So there's 278 future ones, but only 2 have been done. Is there a problem with that, or is that for the future that those 278 new ones will be created?
Thanks, Teresa.
So the way that we label what habitat has been created for nature is really quite ring-fenced. This is mainly sort of dew ponds and meadow creation, which obviously isn't a huge amount of hectares. But so things like tree planting, for example, will come under improved for nature rather than created, because it won't be an established woodland or forest for many years. So what we can actually call created is quite small, and it's very ring-fenced, and that's why the number's so low.
Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. A different topic, at foot of page 253, please, on whole estate plans. If we go to the very foot of the page, obviously we now read it with the Foley Estate WEP having been endorsed earlier today. So I'm just concerned to note that there don't appear to be any others at all in the pipeline. And I just wondered if there's anything encouraging that officers might be able to tell us to suggest that actually there might be some on the horizon. I mean, after all, we're going to keep a WEP policy in the new plan. And then secondly, I mean, Firle and Foley, obviously very, very recent endorsements, but if you think about the first 11 endorsed WEPs, I dare say they've all got action plans of one kind or another. And I would be very interested to know to what extent are those being fulfilled. So I just wonder if perhaps on a future meeting of this committee, we could just be reminded of what the various action plans are of those 11 estates, and are they being monitored, are they being achieved? I think obviously we need to give Firle and Foley a bit more time. If there is a proposal to remind us of that and I've overlooked it, I mean, just remind me, please. So it's a twofold point really, or comment or questions about WEPs.
Thank you. So I'll start and other people will jump in, I'm sure. So in relation to WEPs, I mean, we will get to a point, I guess, where we can't have WEPs because we've covered all the possible organisations that could have them. But I do take your point. We are going to be taking a look at how we manage and look at WEPs going forward. So this is a developing area of work. To your point about monitoring, we do have a monitoring programme for WEPs. So we do sit down with them regularly and check out where they are in delivering their action plans. So I can't see that it would be a problem at some point in the future possibly to come back and provide more detailed information. But I think we're going to be having a little bit of a think about how we manage the WEP process going forward, learning from the really good work that we've done so far and just thinking about any changes that we might need to make to the programme going forward. So we'll see what emerges in the current corporate plan, but that's why we've kind of not got too many in the pipeline at the moment, but there is a monitoring programme that we do look at.
Just to add to Anne's point, as you know, we've spoken about the changes in directorate and the kind of organisation of how we work together. There is going to be a land management part of what is currently CPM, so it will be called Landscape and Operations, and that will be one key part, one key leg of the stool, the three-legged stool. And WEPs and estates will come into that programme of work, so you'll have farmers and landowners all being managed together and that lovely cross-fertilisation happening. We need to do a review of how we do them right now and what's needed going into the future. And so this is a long, rounded way of saying, Stephen, that we need to bring that information back to you in terms of a kind of monitoring report on what's there, what have we done, what do we need to do. So, yeah, taken on board.
off. If you're looking to change how we do webs, could you involve the members in that? Because I think, and I'll be open for comments here, that we get a lot out of the process, both the visits and the discussions and so on. And it'd be a shame to not lose it and not replace it in some form. I also have a question. First of all, I found it far easier to navigate this report than previous ones, so thank you very much for the work you've obviously put in. I was able to hone in on these are the issues and so on, so that was fantastic, thank you. HLT1, I see that we've done 35% of the annual target in what I guess is 50% of the time. Are we confident that we're going to get there? It's going to be quite a push in the last 2 quarters.
Probably need to defer to a colleague on this one, because Claire will absolutely know the answer about exactly where we're at in the work programme, but I would say that it's quite ambitious. But if it's okay with you, we'll come back to you after the meeting and get the information for you, because I don't know it off the top of my head, so rather than make something up, I'll just find out from the person who knows.
Thank you.
I will say, though, for the BNG work that we're doing at the moment, we do have quite a strong pipeline of land secured, which we're hoping will come through this year in quarters 3 and 4. So we hope to meet our annual target this year in terms of securing land for nature. But it's this sort of overall 2030 target that we're not 100% sure about, that we'll need to defer to our colleague about.
Thank you. Okay. If there's no more comments, questions, we'll move to the recommendation. So you'll see it on the screen there. The committee is recommended to receive and consider the Corporate Performance and Projects Report. Can I have all those supporting? Thank you very much. Any other votes? No. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, we now move on to item 13, the Seven Sisters Country Park Performance Report, Q2 25-26. I'm very pleased to have Claire with us to take us through.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so just to remind everybody, this is a Q2 report, so it takes us up not to the most recent day, so bear with me if information you think should be in there isn't. That'll be on the next one, you can look forward to that. So just a reminder, this is a performance report in relation to the business plan that was signed off earlier this year. I've broken it down into the 3 areas of exemplar land management, first-class visitor experience and the financial stability, and tried to highlight what we have achieved in a background of a rather busy Q2. You may remember we had some sunshine, we had a social media presence, I think that would be the phrase, and we were rather busy and we had some sort of staffing issues as well. This summary here is what we've done. I'm not going to go through it bit by bit. I'm happy to take questions. And hopefully you will see where Seven Sisters is managing its own stuff, making that wider contribution into the overall aims and objectives of the National Park.
Questions, comments? Yes, Mark.
Thank you. I welcome the very good news we got on the financial side, but there's one thing I'd like to raise while Claire is with us, and I think it's better it's done at this stage. This is what's going to be the effect when the Exeat Bridge is replaced, because this could have an adverse effect on the operations of the country park. I think we need a plan for that, and it ought to be in the risk register.
So we know work is being planned. East Sussex haven't given us the exact details yet of what that is going to look like and when the closures will be. We have a rough idea, but we don't have the exact details that they are committing to. So we are looking at how that works, and There will be an impact because a lot of the closures will happen at weekends, which is our busiest time. So we will need to work with East Sussex around how we get visitors here. But we don't have a full plan yet because we're still just waiting for some timings and what that might look like and those key dates. But it's very much on my antenna that I need to be looking at how that affects what we will do next year.
And Claire, is it engagement with us or telling us? What approach is it?
I suspect a little bit more telling, but hopefully a bit of engagement as well.
Okay. Thank you. Vanessa.
Thank you. Claire, I just want to say huge well done for Q2. Honestly, that was something, wasn't it? Well done, honestly, to you and the team and holding it all together. And I just remember the times when the toilets collapsed. And you ran out of water, and the coffee machine breaking, and yeah, huge well done to you, because you're always smiling, even when this all happens. So just, hats off, well done, because it's so special and it's great for us. But I've just got a couple of just sort of questions. So on 3, exemplar land management, 3.13. You got ragwort pulling. Can I just check, I know that that's kind of like for grazing animals and why you do it and stuff like that, but also it is quite an important plant for kind of, is it the cinnabar moth? Are you keeping some of it in some other, good.
Yeah, so it's the volume we have. We have strict criteria as part of our countryside stewardship around percentages of various things in various areas. So yes, we do pull from certain areas at certain depth of coverage, but the main reason is it impacts with our grazing animals. But yes, we haven't eradicated it, but we manage that. And same with things like thistles and stuff like that, we manage it. So, and that's part of our countryside stewardship agreement.
Okay, I've got a few things. Sorry, Teresa. And then just going on to 4.1, I know this is Q2. You know how I feel about this. I'm really pleased to see active engagement with the partners across the Heritage Coast. Can you make sure Seaford Town Council, you're having conversations with them? I met with them yesterday. They've got a lot. They've done so much work on traffic management studies and stuff like that that are really important. We could all be using that as an integrated thing. Be interesting. I know we've talked about dates when this is happening, but also just to kind of say to you all, I'm here, I'm a resource, I'm there, I can help pull people together, use me. Okay. And then 4.4, the path. Thanks for putting those little discs on, because it's something, right? It's something. But that's still a really tricky path we're going to get. That's going to be hard for people to engage with that path. It's really long. And so I don't know whether there's a kind of space to have a conversation about maybe an alternative, if we could do some, I don't know. Anyway, that's something just to flag, because I just don't know if that is going to work. And then basic question, 5.4, yeah, I know the pump barn isn't heated really, is it? So yeah, it's quiet in the winter. But the turkey barn, can I just check, is that heated? Yep. Okay, that's just housekeeping thing. And then another thing I just wanted to sort of say about 5.11 and 5.12 and that sort of comms thing. It's really interesting to see what were the most viewed and most engaged posts. I thought that was really interesting. And I was wondering if there's a kind of element of community building that you think about in the social media for that site, for Seven Sisters. I don't know if that comes into it. Anyway, thank you.
I'll try and work through those questions and give you, bear with me. So the wider Heritage Coast Partners work, absolutely, it's multi-layered at the moment. So I have an operational relationship with Town Council, National Trust, all those, and I'm talking to them on that level. Tim and I are working on a much wider piece of work. You were at the first meeting to get those people together, and we're looking at dealing with the different land managers, organisations, all those kind of things, bringing that together so that we've got a much more effective way of looking at how we manage that larger area. It's not going to be an overnight thing because it involves many different partners doing a different thing, from rail companies from London to us on the ground. But we very much are engaging with every stakeholder and every partner, because if we don't, it's not going to work. It's bigger than Seven Sisters and it's bigger than a national park. The pathway between Friston Forest and Seven Sisters, my first point is it was a start, and it was always meant to be a start. So the land, so for those who don't know, there's two car parks. When we were busy, we have a big car park in Friston Forest, which is Forestry England, and then our car park. And obviously when we were busy, both of those car parks were used, but the space in between to navigate was a little tricky. We don't own any of that land. So Forestry England were really open to working with us as a response, an immediate response for this year, to get at least a waymarked path between the two sites. They have a little bit more work to do in terms of some signage at their end they've committed to do, and all my contacts have now left, so I have to start again from the bottom, but I'm on it. But any alternative routes will either be a discussion with Highways or Forestry England to look at. So obviously the ability to deal with that straight away from a Seven Sisters / South Downs National Park point of view are slow, because we rely on other landowners to put those paths in. Yes, so the joy, just to be clear, Pump Bum, big space, no heating summer. Turkey Barn, now it's got Wi-Fi. It's all year round. It's very exciting, and very busy at the moment. Social media, so just as a summary, community building is part of what we're looking at. So as I'm sure most members will know, we have a new digital officer who started this week. Her second day was at Seven Sisters with us. We had a really good session with comms yesterday, really just looking at how we build comms and digital presence over time. Again, not an initial overnight thing that we do. And we have lots of ideas and lots of plans, and we're just pulling that together. I felt a bit sorry for her on day 2 because we threw it all at her. But we will work together to do that. But Ruth and I have been and continue to work on building how we can look at the messaging that both we give out, but actually the National Park also gives out. There needs to be a fundamental change of that kind of visitor attraction, place for nature thing. So we have a plan, and we're just looking to execute that now. That was it, wasn't it? I think that was everything.
Yes, please. Yep.
I just going to pick up what you said about highways, and that strategic kind of pulling that together is so important. Just from meeting with Seaford yesterday, they've got some assets there that could be incorporated in how we manage this traffic flowing across. And I've told them that they need to kind of be, we all need to be talking together to make a plan for the whole area, but they hadn't heard that there was even a group formed. This was the councillors, to be fair, but
So I can absolutely confirm that Seaford Town Council have been contacted about this work. We have started with officers and asked for the cascade of representatives. They didn't attend the first meeting, and they haven't engaged brilliantly so far, and I will be working on that.
I can help from the other end, right?
Thank you. Chris, then Teresa.
Yes, thank you. Good to see the changes and improvements there have been since the change of management last year, so congratulations to you and your team on doing it. Just some questions on 6.3 EV chargers. I assume that's going to generate some revenue for the park. A few more questions, if you don't mind, please. 6.6, the £113,000 favourable variance for year end, hoping that means the losses we used to see, the whole thing is sort of getting better and getting into sort of break even, perhaps even going the right side. And interested in the 6.8, the Sussex Film Office shoot. What sort of organisations are coming there? Who is it who's booking and space and when you come on location? And what do they charge for the pleasure of coming to the Seven Sisters? And then just finally, the initial objective when we bought Seven Sisters how many years ago was to generate revenue for this organisation here. How close are we to that now? Is that now happening? Because we did see some, Stephen and I were there as directors, and we saw some very bad deficits coming through, hence the changes which were made. How much closer are we to that? Has that been achieved? Thank you.
Okay. EV chargers are underway, being installed. Who knew it was so complicated? And I'm not leading on that project, but I'm waiting to find out what the project is. As it has been funded by National Parks England, I'm not quite sure of the financial return on that, but they will definitely be hopefully working before the end of the month, but I said that before. In terms of the operational deficit, favourable thing, I should say, it's quite a journey we've been on, isn't it? Some of the changes that have been made by coming in-house have saved some expenditure, but also we're actually delivering now, busier trading, cottages, everything is coming on board. I will say this is the end of Q2. We make our money in the summer, we spend our money in the winter. So before everybody gets too excited, this is where we are at the end of Q2. I can confirm visitors have literally stopped coming. So it's a very different picture now, even though we have profiled. So I urge caution with everybody and how we look at doing that. But in terms of the finances in relation to the income that's generated to the park, I think there is still some myths, I think, to unpick on some of that. So we will definitely be trying our best anyway to wash our face, and we've got work to do to make sure that Seven Sisters isn't a massive expenditure on the organisation. But then there are lots of lovely bits and pieces around country park designation, what we can use the money for, what money deficits need to be reinvested for, that mean that Seven Sisters will benefit, but we just need to be really careful about how else that might be funding other national park stuff. And in terms of the film office, it's been an odd year, actually, and even the Film Office have said it's been an odd year. So what they charge can be anything from £100 to a small student project to tens of £1,000s if it's wicked. It really does depend who's coming and what they're doing and what the likely impact will be. As a general rule, it's usually anything from a couple of hundred for a small photo shoot to a couple of thousand for some filming. That's just sort of tends to be regular sort of stuff that we've done. We've had quite a lot of clothing brands this year. We've had some outdoor brands, photo shoots, and we've had quite a lot of student requests. We haven't had the biggies this year. And having spoken to the Film Office, because Q3 is looking really, really quiet, they've also said it's quiet for them, but there's a lot of scoping, so they're hoping that Q4 might return. But it just depends whether people want to film at Seven Sisters. But the other thing I should say is we've been a little stricter about what we allow. For example, with all the social media, with all the imagery on there, what we don't want then is a brand, I don't know, doing a camping brand in the middle of the cliffs. That's not going to help us with our nature thing. So we're not quite as, come down, do what you like. We're a little bit more choosy just to make sure that what might end up being out there in the world as an advertising thing corresponds with what the message is that we're trying to put across.
Teresa?
So it's good on 3.11 to say we've had increased visitors, but that's disappointing to see that we've had increased graffiti and litter incidences. I don't know what we can do to improve that. I mean, it's good about having the new comms person. Maybe there's some comms we can do about that. I mean, previously I know we did a dog campaign to keep dogs on lead and to pick up the poo. I don't know whether that's still going, whether we're still putting that out. But I was pleased to see on 5.9 that we've had some volunteers doing litter picks. 67, sorry, I've got put my glasses on, what was it? 69.75 hours of litter picking. That's quite impressive. Thank you.
The downside of more people is more human behaviour, and sadly humans are a law to themselves. What we have seen this year is a wide range of new audiences as well. Some of those have cultural variances where they behave differently, do differently things. And what we also had is a very sunny summer where drinks and eating and being in the countryside has been a thing. So you will always get more antisocial litter, dog waste, all of that kind of thing with more visitors, sadly. So it's more about how do we mitigate that. So we have been working with comms on messaging and take the lead and, don't hang your dog poo in a tree, all of that kind of stuff. But when an audience is there and they're doing, it's really hard to capture. So we spend a lot of time in the mitigation. So the rangers are out, we have volunteers, we have corporate volunteering, we have youth action, who are all out just keeping on top of it. And when we find certain things, so we had a post in the summer, I can't remember when now, about the litter that had been left in a pillbox. We kind of use that as a social media story, but with a narrative around, actually it's really disappointing to see that. There's an element of self-regulation, but the more visitors and with audiences that maybe aren't typical to the countryside, that will always be a bit of a challenge. Yes, and our volunteers, we have plans to do more. I've had quite a summer, and make no bones about the fact that some things haven't quite progressed as we would like. But yes, we currently have 2 volunteers that give us a couple of hours, 3 days a week, and they just help us with that mitigation. And if I have my way, by the end of the year, we'll have a few more helping us with that as well.
Maybe we could have some days a week out and volunteer, because I wouldn't mind going to volunteer. I love a lift to pick. Pardon? Informally or formally, very happy to have members down doing some litter picking.
James, you wanted to say a few words?
Well, it's not just specific to Seven Sisters, but I thought you'd be interested that we're working with a local community group called the Litter Partnership in Winchester that have been really successful. And we're planning to kind of evolve what they've done there and roll it out across the national park. And what this basically involves is volunteers go out litter picking, and we're hoping that our Seven Sisters volunteers will form part of it. And funded by donors, we have contractors who will then match their time. So we'll have professional litter pickers, effectively, being deployed to areas identified by our rangers to try and help with the situation. So obviously that's not just Seven Sisters specific, but it is a new initiative that we're working on, working with local community groups to try and address litter. So I just thought it was worth highlighting that, given you've raised it.
Thank you. Stephen.
Claire, good afternoon. Always a pleasure to see you. And echoing thanks from Vanessa to you and all the team. I'm going to give you a little trip down memory lane. It's about paragraph 3.2. If you look at that, you'll have a little smile because you'll know what I'm going to ask you. Because you were asked at just about every directors' meeting. We've got cattle and horses and sheep on the land. Please tell me that the grazing licences are in place, by which I mean dated, signed, not draft, not undated, not unsigned. It's a legal liability question. Please tell me they're in place now.
I'm afraid there is still one outstanding.
You will know, and everyone I'm sure will know, that it can't be allowed to continue. These are animals. They're dangerous. They have to be done.
We are aware, and we are seeking assistance to level out the details, shall we say. It's not an area of expertise for mine, and some of the negotiations have required extra help, and it is just something on my radar that I do need to resolve.
Thank you. Yes, Jerry.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, congratulations for all the tremendous work that's gone on. Your enthusiasm is always a pleasure to witness. Can I just ask, purely out of curiosity, the occupancy figures at 5.7 for the cottages seem to me quite low, but they're clearly above what was targeted. Are we with the right agency for letting them, or? Don't know.
Yes, we are. So there are a couple of things we need to bear in mind. We are only in our second year. We've literally just turned into our second year of business, so we're growing from 0 to something that's regularly used. We are a niche offer because it's car-free, and because we have had some issues with some of the quality of there's a bit damp and things like that. It's an evolving process. What we are finding is a continued build now on repeat visitors and platforms that people are coming to us from. What we do tend to find is people coming from booking.com, for example, maybe are surprised to find it's car-free because they haven't read the devil in the detail. But what we are finding is a lot of people who really want to come and stay in the nature are coming back. And what we are finding is people who have a connection with Seven Sisters, whether that's from a school trip, whether that's because they used to live in the area, there is some sort of connection. They come and stay, and then they are coming back with their families or friend groups or whatever. So it is an organic growth. We are performing better than we thought we would at this time of the year. The cottage that sleeps 2 is performing incredibly well. The cottages that sleep 5 and 6, again, it's interesting feedback around where people want to be, how they want to go. But they are building. We're doing some work this time of year now to just improve them. But I think we are absolutely with the right people, because if they were anyone else, we would have less bookings. But it is a growth that we need to do. We are only in year 2.
We have a guest speaker coming along.
Thank you, Chair. I was determined not to say anything. And Claire and the team have done a fantastic job, so that's really encouraging to hear. Just wanted to pick up on a couple of points that have been raised. One around relationships with, and thank you, Mark, for the point around the Exeat Bridge. We have got some high-level meetings with East Sussex about a number of highway matters, not just relating to the Seven Sisters and Exeat Bridge, but also including that, so we can pick up a better programme of how it's going to impact on the country park. So thank you, we'll pick that up. And then just on the last point, next week I've got a meeting with the lead grazier, Richard Brown. I'm actually going to his place, and we will pick up that last matter as well. So I just wanted members to be assured that we recognise there are areas we still need to press on, and we'll be doing that in the next coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to say something, Sean? Yeah. Only if no one else does. Go on.
I just want to add my thanks for the amazing work that's gone on. I mean, there are lots of things that we still need to polish and get right, but actually, given where we are so early on in the story of Seven Sisters and the team that you've got, you've done a fantastic job. So well done, despite the unexpected events that happen every week, whether that's water shutting off and not knowing where the actual water pipe is because there's no maps, or the sort of huge onslaught of visitors and car parking chaos. We find ourselves in a position now where we are projecting to make money. I was looking at, you've got a Visit England score there, I think, which is above where we are, so people are coming and we see them when we go, having an amazing time and experiencing it really positively. And the landscape, despite the grazing issue, is looking better and better and really going so. And then now, looking ahead, we're about to move into the sort of next chapter, which is where we become a nature reserve, and that's going to be really exciting. So thank you very much. The team have done an incredible job, and I know that they on occasion have been out at 10 o'clock at night in the rain with torches looking for stopcocks and dealing with all kinds of issues, and go well above and beyond. So please pass that on to the team.
Thanks, Sean. Unless there's any more comments, we'll move on to the recommendation. Yep. So you can see that on the screen. Can I have hands in support, please? Thank you. Any other votes? No? Oh, thank you very much. Claire, I'd just like to echo the comments. Thank you very much for all the hard work and success you're bringing in. Long may that continue. Thank you. Okay, let's have a short break. We're in this, again, getting a warm drink for everybody and have a little shakeout, and we'll get back together in 5 minutes. Okay, I hope you're all suitably refreshed. Let's go on to agenda item 14, which is the risk register, and I'll hand over to Richard.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, members. This is the risk register, the corporate risk register and the report. As usual, I don't propose to go through the risk register in detail. You've got it set out there. Appendix 1 is the explanatory information. Appendix 2 is the corporate risk register itself, and Appendix 3 are the exempt risks also. As set out in the report, since the committee last considered it in September, there's no significant changes to the risk register. However, you will note there are a number of updates throughout the register itself. So if you've got any comments or questions, we're happy to answer them. Thank you, Chair.
The question that I raised earlier about whether Exeat Bridge ought to be added to the risk register.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, so I'll pick that up with Claire and Tim around Seven Sisters. Without knowing a little bit more about it, I don't know the exact risks that presents to us, so we can have a conversation about it, see what they are, and see whether it's something that needs to be escalated onto the corporate risk register or whether it's something that they can manage as part of the Directorate Risk Register as well. So we'll consider that. We'll take that away and consider it. Thanks, Mark.
Just wanted to understand why the finance and budgets risk was increasing and what the mitigations were against it, and if that's something that's just for the short term or if that's a longer term trend.
Yeah, so at the moment, this time of year, it's always a little bit of uncertainty until we actually know what we're going to get in terms of our grants. So the comprehensive spending review happening, and then it's often not until the last minute that we actually hear what we're going to get from DEFRA in terms of our revenue and capital grants as well. So there's always some uncertainty, and we haven't yet had the budget workshops as well with members to look at sort of the mitigations that we might put in place if the budget stays the same, if it goes up or if it's cut. So that's something that will play out through the workshops and some of the scenarios that come forward as well. So at the moment, yes, we indicate that it is increasing, mainly down to uncertainty.
Wow. Ah, Mark.
Sorry, I might have missed something, so I don't want to speak out of turn. Do we have to move into private to talk about the pink papers?
Yes, we do.
Can I ask a question about a pink paper, please?
Do you want to just check if there's anything more on
the... Yeah, anything more on the non-pink paper points, and then we can move into private session. Thank you, Mark, for bringing that up. Okay.
So, hold on. We need to do the example first.
We do. Yeah.
Are you happy for me to run through that briefly?
Yes, please.
Chair. Thank you. Yep. So, members, to consider the exempt matters in the pink papers before you, it's proposed that the press and public are excluded from the meeting as set out on the agenda there, the main reasons for it. In summary, the appendix contains information which is related to the financial or business affairs of the authority, in particular in this case the corporate risks, and it's proposed on balance that while there is a public interest in transparency, this is outweighed by the need for us as the authority to be able to consider our business actions without the disclosure of this information to the public, as it could affect our ability to deliver our services.
Thank you.
So you need a vote.
Oh, we need a vote on that. Are we happy to go into private session? Thank you. Okay. Let's do so. Are we okay, Richard, to go? Okay. Any more on the risk register generally? I'll move to the recommendation, which you'll see on the screen. Can I have your support? Thank you. Any no's or... No? Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Richard. We now move on to item 15, the anti-fraud and corruption policy, and I'll turn to Vicky. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The anti-fraud and corruption policy was due for review this year, so this is what we've presented to you today. Previous version was, I think, in 2016, so it's been quite a significant rewrite. Fascinating subject, I'm sure, but if you have any questions about it, I'm happy to answer if I can.
That looked very clear. Any questions on that? No? Okay, going on. Let's go to the recommendation. Committee is recommended to approve the revised anti-fraud and corruption policy. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, let's go on to item 16, which is the budget monitoring report. And I'll go over to Craig. Thank you very much, Craig.
Great, thank you, Chair. So the report presented today is the month 6 forecast for both revenue and capital for financial year 2025-26. I'll briefly run through some highlights from the report and then take any questions if you have any. But first, I just need to draw your attention to a minor error, and you've got a sheet in front of you with the corrected figures on there. It's the first table in Appendix 1, and it's just that the total should have read 10,927,000 and 11,228,000 for the budget and forecast columns, as opposed to what was published in the pack that you received. Those were the only changes that needed to be made, so it was just about the total columns on those. So aside from that, the revenue forecast at month 6 is a above budget variance of £300,000. This is a movement of £295,000 from month 4 and is a result of unexpected staffing costs in the year and revised assumption regarding how much staff time could be capitalised from where we were a couple of months ago. And the movements and details of overspends are outlined in Appendix 1 to the report. The budget variance at this point is assumed to be funded from the working balance within the MTFS reserve, and that's outlined in Appendix 3 to the report, and any funding adjustments are factored into that table. The report does actually set out within the paragraphs that we are looking to review the earmarked reserves and the use of those to make sure that we've got the required flexibility when we're looking at the MTFS to ensure that the authority remains financially sustainable, and that will be presented at a future report to the committee. And then just finally, Appendix 2 outlines the detail of the capital programme, and in summary, there's a budget of 6.779 million in this financial year, including projects that are externally funded. And at the moment, we're currently looking at an underspend forecast of 3,150,000, and that's made up of variations funded by DEFRA, the capital grant, and reprofiles to future years for those that are externally funded. So I'll leave it there, and if you've got any questions, happy to take them.
Questions? I have a couple, Craig, if that's okay. One of them, are any of those capital underspends use it or lose it capital, or are they all able to be mitigated somewhere else?
So the underspends, the major underspends are those that are funded from external contributions. So that's not a use it or lose it situation. The DEFRA capital grant, however, we've got £2 million and that needs to be spent by the 31st of March 2026. Currently forecasting to spend that, and that's what's profiled in the appendix at the moment.
Okay, thank you. A second question I had, it feels a bit of deja vu with, we were in this sort of situation last year where we were predicting an overspend at this stage. Is there any learning we can get from doing this 2 years in a row?
We're continuing to engage on a monthly basis with all the budget managers, and actually that's improving quite significantly. The situation that's arisen this time round is really attributable, the vast majority of it is attributable to our assessment of how much of the salaries could be capitalised against, and comparing that to what actually we could capitalise on the basis of the returns that Rangers, etc., submitted to us. And that's been extrapolated. There is still some opportunity because apparently Rangers' work increases over this part of the year, this part of the financial year, so we might see that recover in the last half of the financial year. So there is a possibility, but generally, I'd say the improvement is there in terms of the numbers, and people have been paying a lot more attention to their forecasting, which is encouraging. Good. I'm still hoping that we're going to improve on this 300k adverse variance, though.
Good. Oh, well done. Any more comments? Okay, let's move to the recommendation. We've got 4 points under the recommendation there, which I won't read out, but if you read them, and then let's have a show of hands. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, well, one more item to go, if needed. This is item 17, which is a pink paper, which is the confidential items from the last P&R committee meeting in September. Does anybody want to go into private session for that? No? Okay, then thank you all very much indeed for putting up with the cold, and we're done. Meeting's closed. Thank you.